Hello, hello, and welcome to another one of my weekly installments. I'm Laura Goldman. I am a registered dietitian, and I am covering the topic about supplements. I know it's titled here Nature's Ozempic because you may have seen in a few advertisements here and there people promoting this term Nature's Ozempic. And so we're going to get into the weeds in that a little bit. And of course, we'll go over that along with other ways to spot false advertising claims for weight loss vitamins, supplements, etc. And as always, I want to leave the time at the end open for any questions or concerns that you may have. So feel free to hit that little button at the bottom left hand of your screen if any questions arise. So let's get started. Even though we're talking about supplements, it's always good to serve as that reminder that it's the quality of your calories that matter. And no, even though we're talking again about supplements, in some ways you might be able to avoid some supplements when we're focusing on high quality calories. And so it all ties in and can ultimately be an indicator of your success with your overall health and your weight goals. So what we're going to cover today, and this is a lengthy list, but I promise the content won't be lengthy, but we'll touch on some commonly promoted natural weight loss remedies. You might remember some from the past. A little discussion over the supplement industry in general, how to spot those red flags in advertising. But I also wanted to talk about, is there any reality behind these supplements? Could we benefit from them? And also talking on why the popularity seems to only be increasing over time. And finally, along with your questions, I'll have some advice on protecting yourself and what to look for to make sure that you're making wise decisions for yourself. So to start out, the weight loss supplement industry has been ongoing for years. I'm sure you've heard people talk about apple cider vinegar or Garcinia cambogia, as well as raspberry ketones, green tea, etc., etc. As I was preparing these slides, I started to be reminded more and more of other supplements from the past that I'd all but forgotten until they started popping up again. And as always, there's those advertisements that will show up, but I wanted to just jog all of your memories because you would think that if some of these were the miracle we've been looking for, they'd still be flying off the shelves and as popular as ever. And as these trends go, there's a new one. The new kid on the block is this Nature's Ozempic, which from what I can tell, it seems to be berberine is the product that they're promoting most often. However, I have seen here and there online other products being touted as Nature's Ozempic, including fiber. I saw someone listing fiber as Nature's Ozempic, which just very much surprised me because that is so different than all the other ones that we would normally see. So this one seems to be following in the footsteps of the others from before, just being promoted as the hot new thing out there. And it seems like they're typically marketed. So not only are they marketed as the miracle weight loss product, but they're marketed as the safer alternative to the weight loss products that might be pharmaceutical, or they'll be stated as all natural. And they're saying this in sort of a way to try and appeal to the masses, saying, trust this instead. This is going to be, a much better approach. So let's talk about the supplement industry in general, because, that's the industry that's marketing these products. And as you may already know, it differs significantly from the pharmaceutical industry, mainly in terms of how the regulation is. You can say that there's a pretty clear lack of regulation overall when it comes to supplements because manufacturers really don't have to prove the safety, the quality, They don't have to prove what ingredients are in there before they put it out to market. And really the regulation part, they really only step in. They come in after there's someone who's reported and documented being harmed by a product. And then they do come in, but it seems almost like a little late to the show, if we're being honest here. Also, because of this lack of regulation, you might see that it will contain more or fewer ingredients than claimed on the label. And unfortunately, as has been shown in recalls in the past, it might contain ingredients that aren't listed. Oftentimes, you'll see ingredients when they're containing the ones that aren't listed, it may be unintentional, so heavy metals have shown up sometimes, or there may be as much as I'd like to believe in the goodness of others, there may be some intentionality behind some of them when there are actual pharmaceutical products located in the items. And this is an editorial comment by me, but as I was going over these slides and thinking about the regulation of the supplements, and then I thought about the labels. Just an opinion of mine, but it almost seems as though the label is more heavily regulated than the product within the bottle. And I would say that that means that there needs to be some caution about what you're choosing to take. So when we're talking about marketing, since that's how people become aware of these supplements, what about some of the red flags? What are some things to look out for where you might say, are we really sure about this? And there are some obvious ones that I don't quite list here, such as if it's too good to be true, it probably is, et cetera, et cetera. But I also wanted to comment on a few others that maybe could make some people intrigued or want to try, such as I put at the top, the clickbait phrases, doctors don't want you to know, or on the right here, I put this image here about doctors stunned, this melts belly fat. I also saw the one recently where it says dermatologists hate her, and you see a picture of a woman sort of peeling something off of her face, and those seem to get clicks. Otherwise, they wouldn't be out on those websites. So that could be one area that you can look out for, because the phrase doctors don't want you to know or medical personnel hate this one trick. I don't know many doctors who would be upset about something that's helpful for a patient, but it does seem to grab people's attention. Also, if you're looking at the labels, there is a certain way to write labels on these products that don't have to list exact amounts of an ingredient. And that's especially common when you see the phrase proprietary blend. So a proprietary blend then gives them the luxury almost of not having to, they still have to list the ingredients, but they don't have to list the exact quantity. And so that can sometimes raise an eyebrow or two, because you might need a certain amount of a product. There are some products that do get tested in clinical trials, and there are certain doses that seem to have the impact on a person that they might be looking for or not looking for. And so it's nice to know what dose you could be getting. Also, some red flags, and these aren't the only claims, but some claims that really just don't mean anything. So if you see these on the bottle or on a website, it does make you want to question why they're listing it. And part of it is just simply appeal, or the sellability factor. So a term like clinically tested, that doesn't really pan out. Clinically tested doesn't mean clinically proved. And what is their exact definition of clinically tested in that instance? They should be able to back that up with research or showing what kind of tests they're trying to claim there. Also, and I've seen this, and it can be a frustrating part, is you'll see the phrase third party tested, and it's wonderful. The idea of getting something third party tested is fantastic, because that's what you want to see. You want to see supplement companies that want to be accountable to another group that's going to give a non-biased evaluation of the product in terms of the contents that it has. But if the company, if the supplement company doesn't say who the third-party tester is, that would be something that would make you wonder. For example, you may see on some bottles the USP label, and that is one way that you can say that this product is being held to a higher standard. Or I use consumerlab.com. They are a third-party testing group. And if there's a company that, especially if they have voluntarily submitted their products to be reviewed by Consumer Lab, if they pass the tests, most likely you're going to see that Consumer Lab, there's a little label that might be put on the product itself, so you can know that it has been tested and by who. So check for that. Another claim that doesn't really mean anything is pharmaceutical grade, because there's not a whole lot of supplements or herbs or anything like that that would be pharmaceutical grade. There's not necessarily a definition for that when we're talking about these products. So again, a meaningless title that's simply designed with the idea of you wanting to buy it after reading these words. And of course, if there are advertisements going on, maybe there is this sense of urgency. This is a great deal, but you have to buy now for a limited time only, et cetera, et cetera. Or you may see influencers promoting a certain product, and there might be some promotion and an urgency on that part too. And again, that's not really a good sign. Something that is true and something that works well, you don't need that urgency behind it. So those are a few red flags to look out for, and try not to get bought into it. Or at least let yourself ask more questions before you hit that buy now button. But you may ask yourself, do these products work? And I had to do a bit of a dive on this because I wanted to give the weight loss promoted supplements a fair chance. I wanted to see, is there something behind any of this? Because I think it's important that people know the full truth. But I do think the truth is a bit bitter, as I put in the intro slide there. There's a bitter truth to this. So is there a chance that appetite suppression can happen with some of these supplements? Yes, absolutely. Frequently, it's feelings of fullness, and that tends to have to do with the product itself expanding in the stomach to make you feel full. So it might be a fibrous product in general. But also caffeine can lead to some level of appetite suppression. And many of these supplements that especially talk about having energy or even talk about having caffeine in them, the caffeine level is sometimes shockingly high. And so it is important to be aware of that. So the caffeine content can also be an appetite suppressor. There was one product I was reading some reviews on Consumer Lab actually, and there's one product that I'd not heard of before. I think it's called Gymnema, that there's some suspicions that it may affect one's sense of taste. For how long or in what way, I'm not entirely sure, but taste perception could also suppress one's appetite, absolutely. I know that outside of appetite suppression, Garcinia cambogia and green tea extract, both of them do have some other ways that they can potentially work in a small amount. Green tea seems to affect the absorption of certain carbohydrates, and Garcinia cambogia may have an impact on fat metabolism. But again, the amount, you have to sort of question whether or not it's enough to really make a big difference. And so we'll talk about well, I'll even touch on it right now. Is the weight loss a reality? So in the bottom part, the answer is maybe, possibly. It seems like there have been some suggested effects, but the results in the studies that are out there, and generally the studies that have been done, are considered lower quality or potentially biased because they're done by the company itself. So results are mixed, and it might not be worth the risk because, again, some of these supplements that are being promoted they could be counterfeit. I've heard that sometimes when they're sold not from the company itself, it might be a counterfeit item that you could buy somewhere else, and then it wouldn't even be the product you're looking for. Or just perhaps the supplement doesn't contain what it says, has too much of something, might not be worth the risk. But I did find one example where I could find some hard numbers just to see what weight loss effects there are. And one example is that Garcinia cambogia. And when they compared it to a placebo, or essentially a sugar pill that didn't have the product in it, it was about the people who took the Garcinia cambogia product had a 2.9 pound loss of weight, more weight lost than those who didn't take that. So I just wanted to put that out there so you could see what that was, what one of the results happened to be. But now again, let's look at the risks, because I did talk about not worth the risk from maybe just being the wrong product in there, but let's look at some real risks from the supplements themselves. So the heart can be affected, especially by stimulant blends, that could contain caffeine, and that can affect your blood pressure, better or worse, can also cause your heart rhythm or heart rate to be affected, which is no small thing. Also, there was some evidence of liver toxicity with high amounts of green tea extract. And then finally, and probably the most impactful for the majority of people, are that there can be interactions with other medications. And there really were too many for me to list, so I didn't list them here, but that's why it is always very important before starting a supplement to speak with your provider about the supplement you're looking into, because there may be a potential interaction with some of your other medications that might make the medication that you're taking act too strongly, which could be very dangerous, or might block the absorption. It just sort of depends. So I want to make sure that you're aware of that. I did want to touch on berberine, since that is the Nature's Ozempic, and since that was part of the title, I figured let's talk about what berberine is and what we're seeing there. So it is a compound. It's found in these plants, basically golden seal root, barberry, or the Oregon grape. And I was curious about what the health effects it did happen to have. In terms of blood sugar, it actually seems like it might have some good effects on that. So much so that it is advised that if you take a medication that is supposed to lower your blood sugar, that taking berberine as well may cause symptoms of hypoglycemia or low blood sugar. So that's really interesting and very compelling to see, hey, this actually might do something, because it does seem to work on blood sugar in a pretty dramatic enough effect where you do need to consider what other medications you're taking for that. In terms of weight loss, however, because it does seem like it's promoted more about weight loss than it is about blood sugar control, that is questionable. I was looking high and low at the studies, and it seems that there are some that imply some amount of weight loss. But again, those studies tended to be biased, or they had low participant numbers, and so not the highest quality of studies. So more research would definitely need to be done before we could definitively say how good it is at causing weight loss. There are also side effects that are associated with berberine. The standard GI side effects, which do seem very similar to GLP-1 side effects: nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation, as well as maybe some gas and abdominal pain. There were some reports of jaundice or yellowing of the skin, and it may lower your blood pressure. So again, there's a blood pressure effect that you could see. And there are also medication interactions that can be seen here. One is with cyclosporin, and possibly may also interfere with statins, blood thinners, Viagra, and more medications. So this would definitely be a product you'd want to talk to your doctor about if you were ever considering trying it. And then I wanted to mention, and maybe this is splitting hairs, but berberine doesn't act like a GLP-1. It does not cause the creation of GLP-1 in our body. It doesn't affect those receptors that our body has the way the GLP-1 medications do. So it's a completely different product. So it's much of a misnomer to call it Nature's Ozempic. And after you may have heard me essentially sort of poo-poo some of the supplements here, you may ask, why is this industry still booming? And I would also I also find myself asking this, and these are some thoughts and seems to be some commonalities, but I would love to know any of your opinions as well. It could be desperation. It could be a moment where you are feeling bad or concerned about your health and you feel like you've tried everything and nothing's working. And then you see this advertisement for something that seems to be a new option. And so there's some hope there. So I think a lot of times there's that desperate moment of, I need to try it. I've tried everything else. Why not? Also, let's be honest, it's much easier to obtain. You can go to the pharmacy section of your grocery store or to another neighborhood pharmacy. In there, it's over the counter, no prescription needed, no doctor's visit, just pick it up, and all you need is a credit card or some money, and that's about all you need to get it. So that has a great appeal too. Then we go down to some things like assumptions or sort of maybe this mentality behind supplements. One, I think a lot of people assume that because it's natural or something from the earth, sometimes, not all of them, but there's this assumption that they're not going to have side effects. It's not a medicine, it's not a medication, so it's not going to cause side effects. But it can. They really can, and that is a true thing. And also there seems to be this lack of trust, not for everyone, but a lack of trust of Western medicine or pharmaceutical products. And so the lack of trust in those would maybe push someone toward picking more supplements and vitamins that they can obtain that way. And also, I think there is this sense of, well, if I'm taking this, then I'm healthier. And I think that comes from when people feel if they're not eating a perfect diet, that if they can take a multivitamin, then they have put that Band-Aid on there and then everything is solved. And it's not quite that. There are times when supplements are important and called for, and they do have their place, but just taking a handful of supplements does not automatically make you healthier, to be sure. But of course, if you ever have opinions, I would be so curious to know your thoughts on why this industry might be booming, because everyone has their own reasons. And so these were just a few that I thought of that I've also heard some people tell me. And while we've sort of covered the red flags, I wanted to just talk about what to look out and how you can protect yourself. So the first and foremost is to know how to effectively research a supplement. And the best thing is to go to some sources that you can trust. So there's one, the NIH Office of Dietary Supplements. It's free to access. Also Consumer Lab, which I've mentioned. You could use that. That one does require a subscription for you to get access to all of their content, but that's why I do list here that you can ask your provider or dietitian, because if you're asking me, I'd be happy to look it up on Consumer Lab. There is another subscription service that I haven't had a chance to look into fully to see how high quality their research is. It's called examine.com, but again, it is a subscription type of product, but I was very intrigued because it looks like they do try to parse out the research that's been done on various supplements and summarize very succinctly some conclusions about what might be true, what might be false, the risks, etc. So I'm looking forward to learning a little more about that myself, but I wanted to at least mention that to you. And then finally, since we talked about third-party testing, I wanted to put over here on the right-hand side a few quality certification programs that you can then, if you see these on the label, you can trust that there's going to be a better level of testing and most likely a higher quality, or at least a trustworthy product that you can then have confidence in purchasing. And with that, I want to make sure I open this up to questions. So feel free to hit that button at the bottom left hand of your screen. Feel free to have any questions or comments. All right. Well, I think that about does it for today. Again, if you ever have any questions that come up later, feel free to reach out to the Premier Weight Loss Group. They can get you in touch with me, or they might be able to answer that themselves. And I hope that you have a lovely rest of the day. I will be taking a break for the next few weeks, but I intend to be back in September. So I hope everyone has a lovely August. And of course, if anything comes up or if you have questions, I can still be accessed through email through the Premier Weight Loss team. So just because I'm taking a break on here does not mean that I will be unavailable. So feel free to reach out at any time if something comes up. But until the next time, I hope everyone has a lovely day, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.